All right, man, we are now days away from what you could call, conceivably, the most significant free agent football decision that we've seen in the free agent era. Lewis, what do you think will go into Tom Brady's decision?
Well, Adam, I think being set up for success is number one, what will go into his decision. Because I think, Tom, this is more than about money, and we've talked about this before. I think this is about respect. This is about actually having a football team constructed at this point in time in his career that really allows him to maximize his abilities. I think Tom, at all costs, wants to avoid a situation like he had last year, where network cameras caught him over and over again on the sideline, basically looking exasperated like he had no answers anymore. That's not what he's used to.
And what's so interesting about that, I agree with you, Lewis. When you're dealing with an icon, he's going to give you a list of all the things he needs just for you to be considered. It may be offensive line, it may be organizational structure, it may be days off, because he may be in a city where his family isn't. And if you can't hit all those metrics on a checklist, you're out. And the other challenge you have, let's take Tennessee. Let's say Tennessee has an interest because of the Mike Vrabel connection. What a challenge for them. You have to be all in on Tom Brady and sell and recruit. But on the other hand, you want to keep Ryan Tannehill warm, because what happens if you lose out to Tom Brady and now you have to tell Ryan Tannehill how much you love him and you want him. So what a tough dynamic it is for those teams.
So isn't it interesting that he might be asking himself, is there a team that gives me a better chance to win the Super Bowl than the New England Patriot team that is giving him all these Super Bowl rings? But he might feel that right now based on what he went through last year.
Yeah, especially if New England wants to operate in similar ways like they have in the past, which is more or less, look, our brand sells itself. Bill Belichick, look.
That is what they do.
I know, and I sell myself. Look, I can remember a story that Sean Springs told me that when he went up there for a free agent visit, I said, well, did they roll out the red carpet for you saying to Rich? He's like, no. They picked me up in a van, they got me a box lunch, and I went and met with Bill in an office. And that was it. Because they expect people to then say, look, the lure of being coached by the greatest coach of all time is enough. And quite honestly, in today's day and age, it may not be enough anymore. You see what's going on in free agency, in the draft. In even college recruiting, kids want to be wined and dined. People want to be told, I really want you.
And Lewis, to that point, you played for Coach Belichick. I work for him. What's fascinating to me, of all the things we talked about, if I could pick one conversation over the next year to be a fly on the wall, it'd be this one. Tom Brady moves his family to City X. He talks to New England about maybe going back, needing every Monday off. What's that conversation like? Rubber meets the road, decision-making time. Coach Belichick, I won't be here on Monday. I get Tuesdays off. Does Bill Belichick want Tom Brady 60% of the time, or let's say Andy Dalton 100% of the time? And when he looks at all the teams and all the variables, I think at the end of the day, that conversation between Tom Brady and Bill Belichick will be a factor.
Well, let me say this. I don't think they wait to have that conversation.
Right.
I think that conversation occurs before he goes and visits City X or Team Y, and they know where they stand. Okay, you tell me no.
Well, I can tell you why, because when we were trying to negotiate a trade with Green Bay to get Brett Favre was trying to decide between us and Tampa Bay. And John Gruden, who had coached Brett Favre in Green Bay, said, oh, if you go to the Jets, you're going to be playing in Times Square. It's an awful place to be. I made it mandatory to Brett Favre that he had to hunt and fish on a farm near the Jets facility for him to come to us, to try to assure him that his experience would be totally different. And I think at the end of the day, when he gets into decision-making mode and Team X, Y, and Z are promising all these things, I think Coach Belichick strategically will come back and say, hey, Tom, we're going to have a new paradigm and address all those other issues Lewis, that you talked about.
What's interesting is, for me, you would love to be inside of Tom's head right now, and even after he makes his decision, especially if he does leave. It's funny, you don't really miss what you had until you don't have it anymore.
And I think he's prepared to leave. I think he's thinking about leaving. And I think he has to get to that point where he walks up the cliff and looks into the abyss and says, am I ready to jump?
Yeah.
And I think people think that there's a real chance he will. But until he takes that plunge and gets out there, you have to wonder whether that will be enticing enough or whether he'll just return to what everybody assumes has been his rightful place in NFL lore in New England, because it is so hard to imagine Tom Brady wearing a Raider, Charger, Titan, Buccaneer, 49er. You pick the helmet. It's hard to imagine. Well, no matter how it plays out and no matter what team he chooses, it's going to be fascinating to watch in the days to come. That's your insider blueprint on the Tom Brady Effect.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.